Okay, do we have everyone? Welcome to the Office of Tax Appeals. Before we begin, I would like to let our IT to start the live stream. Thank you. I am the lead administrative law judge, Eddie Lam, and with me are administrative law judges John Johnson and Asaf Kletter. While I'm the lead administrative law judge for purposes of conducting this hearing, all three judges are co-equal decision makers. We are currently off the record. We just needed to cover some housekeeping items before we move on. Thereafter, we'll get back on the record and parties will have the opportunities to present their arguments. If anytime you are confused, please ask me any questions. Also present is our stenographer, Ms. Alonso, who is reporting this hearing verbatim. To ensure we have an accurate record, we ask that everyone speak one at a time and do not speak over each other. Also, please speak clearly and loudly. When needed, Ms. Alonso will stop the hearing process and ask for clarifications. After the hearing, Ms. Alonso will produce the official hearing transcript, which will be available on the Office of Tax Appeals' website. This hearing transcript and the video recording are part of the public record. Today's hearing is being conducted electronically with the agreement of all the parties. There are a couple of general rules that I would want everyone to keep in mind for this hearing. And that is, please do not speak over each other. Each side will have the opportunity to be heard. So please wait for when it's your turn to present. Do not use the chat feature in Zoom. Please mute your microphone if you are not speaking to avoid any feedback or background noises. Again, this proceeding is being broadcast live, and any information shared on our screen and said is publicly viewable. Also, as a reminder, the Office of Tax Appeal is not a court. We are an independent appeals body. The Office of Tax Appeals is staffed by tax experts and is independent of the state tax agencies. Let me check with my colleagues to see if they are ready. Is Ms. Alonso ready? I see a thumbs up. Okay. Is there any questions before we get on the record? I'll start off with appellant. Ms. Stone?
No questions.
Thank you, Ms. Stone. Is there any questions to FTB?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tuttle. Okay, we will go on the record. We are opening the record for the appeal of J. Hochberg and J. Hochberg. This matter is being held before the Office of Tax Appeals. The OTA case number is 230413111. Today's date is Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025, and the time is approximately 9:30. This hearing is being conducted electronically with the agreement of the parties. Today's hearing is being heard by a panel of 3 members. My name, again, is Eddie Lam, and I will be the lead judge. Judge John Johnson and Judge Asaf Kletter are the other members of this tax appeals panel. All 3 panel members will meet after the hearing and produce a written opinion as equal participants. Although the lead judge will conduct the hearing, any judge on this panel may ask questions or otherwise participate to ensure that we all have the information needed to decide this appeal. For party introductions, can we please have appellant start introducing yourself onto the record?
Yes, good morning. My name is Margarita Stone for appellant today.
Thank you, Ms. Stone. And can we please have FTB introduce themselves onto the record?
Hi, my name is Topher Tuttle, representing Respondent Franchise Tax Board.
Thank you.
My name is Maria Brosterhouse, and I'm also with the Franchise Tax Board.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so as discussed and agreed upon by the parties at the pre-hearing conference, and as notated in my minutes and orders, the issues in this matter are whether appellants have established reasonable cause to support the abatement of late payment penalty, whether appellants establish grounds to support the abatement of the underpayment of estimated tax penalty, and whether appellants establish grounds for abatement of interest. No objections were made, and these were admitted through the pre-hearing conference minutes and orders issued on January 8th, 2025. I'm going to start off with the exhibits. Appellant has identified Exhibit 1, and FTB has no objections to it. Appellant also submitted 2 witness declarations as evidence on January 10th, 2025. Does FTB have any objections to the 2 declarations as evidence?
No objection.
Thank you. Does FTB plan to mail or deliver the 2 declarants a copy of relevant written questions for the declarants?
No.
Thank you. Let me see. FTB, can you confirm that you will waive the right to question the 2 declarants in the record?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, then we will have I will renumber the 2 declarations as Exhibit 2, both the declarations as Exhibit 2. So let me see. Sorry. So we have Exhibit 1 and 2. And those will be admitted into the record. Okay, and so I wanted to confirm that appellant, you do not have any more exhibits.
Correct.
Thank you. All right, moving on to FTB's exhibits. FTB has identified exhibits A through J and has no other exhibits to offer as evidence. Appellant has no objections to them during the pre-hearing conference, and those were admitted into the record. I want to confirm with FTB that you don't have any more exhibits to submit.
No more exhibits.
Thank you. All right, we will soon begin the hearing. Ms. Stone, so you can begin your presentation for about 15 minutes. As a reminder, Ms. Stone, you will be offered a final statement after FTB's closing remarks for about 10 minutes. You can begin anytime, Ms. Stone.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So today there are, as you mentioned, 3 issues before us. I will focus my verbal argument on one of those issues, which is whether appellants have established reasonable cause based on reasonable reliance on their CPA's advice. So Jason and Jennifer Hochberg appellants have been Deborah Potter's, and I'm going to refer to her as CPA, client since 2016. So for the past 8 years, they have worked with her for filing and payment compliance. Throughout the 21 tax year, like they have done in prior years, they contact their CPA periodically to provide all their information, and their CPA provides tax planning, tax consulting, and tax advice, which includes but is not limited to calculating their estimated tax payments. Appellants received most of their income during the 4th quarter of tax year 21 and elected to use the annualized income installment method to calculate their required estimated tax payments. In September of 22, a Schedule K-1 was processed for Lilium Holdings Fund 1 LLC. There was a line item on that K-1 for bonus depreciation that had to be added back and included on the Form 540 personal income tax return. CPA included this information on the Form 540 return, and the return was timely filed by the extension due date. The CPA advised appellants of the balance due, and appellants immediately paid the tax, penalties, and interest. However, said payment of the additional tax was late. Appellants do not dispute the assessment of the late payment penalty, but they request for said penalty to be abated based on reasonable cause, reliance on a tax professional's advice. RMTC Section 191.32 imposes a late payment penalty when the taxpayer fails to pay the amount shown on the return by the April 15th due date. The penalty may be abated if the taxpayer shows that the failure to pay on time was due to reasonable cause and not due to willful neglect. The taxpayer bears the burden of proving that an ordinary, intelligent, and prudent business person would have acted similarly under the circumstances. Reliance on a tax professional's advice for questions of substantive law may constitute reasonable cause, such as whether a liability exists where certain conditions are met. So 1, whether the tax professional has competency in the subject tax law. 2, taxpayer's full disclosure on the relevant facts and circumstances. And 3, taxpayer relied on the tax professional's substantive advice. So 1, competency. I don't believe that is in dispute, but we have a certified public accountant who's been practicing for more than 20 years. She provides services in several service lines, including but not limited to tax preparation, tax and estate planning, and tax consulting. So over the years, CPA has prepared, reviewed hundreds of personal and business income tax returns, and that also includes California returns. The second element is whether appellants did full disclosure to their CPA. So that also is not in dispute. Appellants have been and always have provided their information to the CPA for filing and payment compliance. So like I said, herein the FTB does not dispute 1, CPA's competency, or 2, whether appellants fully disclose the relevant facts and circumstances. The matter in dispute is whether the advice provided by CPA consisted as substantive advice. The substantive law at issue was whether there was taxable income relating to bonus depreciation. Appellants relied on their competent tax professional for the determination of amount of tax and proper treatment of income expense items on their 21 tax return. This added back bonus depreciation is substantive and not just a procedural clerical error. So let's picture this from the appellant's point of view. There is a give and take relationship, and that relationship and trust continues to build over the years with their CPA. Taxpayer provides the necessary relevant information, and CPA advises the appellants with tax planning positions to take on their returns, calculating the amount of estimated tax payments, etc. This particular year, 2021, Lithium Holdings Fund 1 LLC was formed, and there was a federal and 18 state K-1s that were issued in September of 22. The K-1 income was included along with the added back bonus depreciation on the personal income tax return. Throughout the year, appellants relied on their CPA to timely file and accurately report their income and deductions. Taxpayers are not, or appellants are not tax professionals, so they hire experts to make sure they are in filing and payment compliance. Throughout the year, several discussions were had and estimated tax payments made given the advice of their CPA. When the return was completed, CPA advised appellants of the additional balance due to the add back bonus depreciation, and the appellants paid it with penalties and interest. However, from appellants' point of view, they would have paid the additional tax timely if they would have known that there was an additional tax due. Appellants did everything that a reasonable person would have done, hired a tax professional, provided the necessary and relevant tax information, and paid the taxes as advised. But for the added back bonus depreciation, appellants would have been in payment compliance. Reliance on the tax preparer is reasonable and establishes reasonable cause. Note that appellants understand that interest cannot be abated, but if penalties are abated, the interest on the penalties will also be abated. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Stone. Now I'm going to turn to my panel members to see if they have any questions. I'll start off with Judge Kletter. Do you have any questions?
This is Judge Clutter. I'm going to hold my questions until the parties complete their presentation, so no questions at this time.
Thank you, Judge Kletter. Judge Johnson, do you have any questions for Ms. Stone?
Judge Johnson, no questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I also do not have any questions. I will move on to FTB. FTB, you can begin your presentation whenever you're ready.
Thank you, and good morning. My name is Topher Tuttle, and I'm representing Respondent, the Franchise Tax Board. With me is Maria Brosserhaus, also representing Respondent. And at the outset, I just want to clarify, although the appellants have stated that FTB does not contest the competency or the full disclosure of documents, I would say that FTB does contest those points, although they have not been briefed. And I will state that there has been no stipulation to those issues before this hearing. And so my argument will address FTB's position about those issues. So at issue in this case is first, whether appellants have established any grounds to abate the underpayment of estimated tax penalty. And second, whether appellants have demonstrated reasonable cause to abate the late payment penalty. The facts of this case are straightforward. Appellants did not pay the approximately $80,000 tax amount due on their timely filed tax return for tax year 2020 until October 17th, 2021. Appellants explained that this underpayment of tax arose from a failure by their tax preparer to add back a bonus depreciation amount for California tax purposes. Turning first to the underpayment of estimated tax penalty. Appellants have argued that the estimated tax penalty should be abated based on appellants' reasonable reliance on advice given by their tax professional. However, there is no reasonable cause exception for the estimated tax penalty. California law provides that the estimated tax penalty may be abated if, by reason of casualty, disaster, or other unusual circumstances, the imposition of the penalty would be against equity and good conscience. In this case, appellants have not demonstrated any casualty, disaster, or other unusual circumstances. Therefore, appellants have failed to establish any grounds upon which the estimated tax penalty may be abated. Turning now to the late payment penalty. A taxpayer has the burden of proof to show that reasonable cause exists to support abatement of the late payment penalty. To establish reasonable cause, appellants must demonstrate that the failure to timely pay occurred despite the exercise of ordinary business care and prudence. A taxpayer's reliance on improper advice as to a matter of tax law may be considered reasonable cause, provided the advice is predicated on two conditions. First, the taxpayer relied on a tax professional with competency in the subject tax law. And second, the tax professional's advice was based upon the taxpayer's full disclosure of the relevant facts and documents. Turning first to the requirement of competence in the subject tax law. In this case, appellants have failed to demonstrate that their specific tax preparer at Eide Bailly was competent in California tax law. In the declaration submitted by Deborah Potter, she explains that she is a certified public accountant licensed by and based in the state of Montana. There is no evidence in the record that Ms. Potter has specific training or experience in California tax law. Furthermore, Ms. Potter admits that the reason she underestimated appellant's tax amount at the payment deadline was a California-specific bonus depreciation add-back. Based on the lack of evidence that appellant's tax professional had education, training, or experience in California tax law, and the fact that appellant's tax professional made an error relating to a California-specific tax provision, appellants have failed to establish that their tax professional was competent in California tax law. Appellants have not shown that the information necessary to determine the taxability of the bonus depreciation add-back was provided before the payment deadline. Appellants have also failed to provide evidence of the specific advice provided to appellant and the time at which the advice was given. In addition, although appellants claim that they paid the underpaid tax as soon as they learned about it, they have not provided evidence of when exactly their tax professional discovered the error about the bonus depreciation add back and when that error was communicated to them. Without additional evidence of the specific advice their tax professional provided to them and when it was given, appellants have failed to show reasonable reliance on their tax professional. Since appellants have failed to establish any grounds upon which the underpayment of estimated tax penalty or the late payment penalty may be abated, FTB's denial of appellant's claim for refund should be sustained. I'm happy to answer any questions the panel may have. Thank you.
Thank you. I will turn to my panelists if they have any questions. I'll start off with Judge Clutter.
This is Judge Clutter, no questions.
Thank you. Judge Johnson?
Judge Johnson, no questions. Thank you.
Okay. I also do not have any questions. All right, then I will turn over to appellant. Ms. Stone, you can start your final closing remarks whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. So just to address STB, what they brought up right now is one, the competency. So yes, CPA is licensed in Montana, but she has many years of experience preparing California returns. So she has more than one client that actually resides in California. So this taxpayer does reside in California, and she's prepared his returns for multiple years. So yes, actually, when I did ask her about her experience, she actually felt more comfortable preparing and knowing the California law more than she did the Montana. She said she felt very comfortable with California. And then for full disclosure is that the information was provided. Note that the timing of the estimated tax payments when they were made is, given CPA told tax appellants when to pay and make the estimated tax payments. So we see a record of that. And then, as I mentioned, the K-1 wasn't even prepared until September of 22, which is after April 15. And that is what that K-1 was the issue that had the bonus depreciation issue. So again, that K-1 wasn't prepared until September of 22. That deadline was by the September 15 deadline. And then that information was used to prepare the personal return in October. So personal return was filed by October 15 and payment was made. And then, so, they did everything that the CPA advised them to do. Again, there is a record of the estimated tax payments. You could see that as evidence. K-1 wasn't prepared until September of 22, and the return was filed by October 15. So just wanted the judges to be aware of that. And again, the taxpayer, the question is whether they relied on the CPA. I don't think that's even really a question. They obviously relied on their CPA. They made the payments as advised. And the issue wasn't apparent until after the April 15 deadline. So taxpayers really, unfortunately shouldn't be harmed by, what happened in this situation. So that's it.
This is Judge Lan speaking. I'll turn over to my panels for any last questions. Judge Clutter, do you have any questions?
No last questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Judge Johnson?
Yes, Judge Johnson. Question for Ms. Stone. Thank you for being here. You mentioned that the K-1 wasn't processed or received or available until September of 2022. Do we have that in the record anywhere? Were there any exhibits showing when it was made available to appellants or the CPA?
It is not in any exhibits. That return was, you see the K-1 part of the return, and FTB included part of the return in the exhibits. It's not the complete return because the complete return was, I believe, like 100 pages. But you do see reference. Well, if you look at the return, you'll see that there was K1 coming from Lithium Holdings LLC, and there was, I believe, also losses relating to that entity as well on the tax return. They did file a return by the September 15 deadline.
Okay, thank you. Oh, and going back to sort of other statements here, in the declarations, I think both declarations use the language, it was discovered that there was bonus depreciation that needed to be added back. So it mentions it was discovered. And then in the reply brief that you filed, it says the CPA failed to include a large bonus depreciation add back. I guess kind of the question there is, was there any indication that the CPA should have known as of the payment due date that there was going to be this bonus depreciation add back?
Well, I guess it didn't really become an issue, really. It was on the Schedule K1. So when the Schedule K1, that's when everything was really discovered because of the K1 being completed in September, and then, making sure that was included on the personal return in October. So prior to that, don't believe it was an issue.
Okay, and do you know if there was any efforts by the CPA or appellants to try to get all the tax information, the information from what would be on that K1 by the payment due date?
I mean, like I said, the taxpayer and the CPA have worked together for multiple years, and they have, taxpayers have always disclosed the information. One of the issues is that this Lithium Holdings Fund 1 LLC 21 was actually their first year. So that I'm sure also played into it. So it wasn't a history of activity going on prior to 21. And that contributed, I'm sure, to the issue as well.
Okay, thank you. I understand you're not testifying, it's not testimony at all, just trying to answer some of those questions that maybe there are evidence in the record that, we could point to kind of answer some of these questions, but I appreciate your answers. Thank you.
Welcome.
This is Judge Lam speaking. I don't have any questions, but I want to take a 5-minute recess to discuss with my panel members. So we'll be back in at 10 a.m. I'll be closing my my camera and also muting my mic. Thank you. Hello, everyone. We're back on the record. Ms. Alonso, are we ready? Are you okay with being back on the record? Thank you. I see a thumbs up. Okay, this is Judge Lam speaking. I do not have any further questions. Now I'm going to turn to the parties. FTP, do you have any questions before we conclude this hearing?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tuttle. Ms. Stone, do you have any questions before we conclude this hearing?
I do not.
Thank you. Then we're ready to conclude this hearing then. This case is submitted on to January 2022, 2025. The record is now closed. Thank you, everyone, for coming in today. The panel members will meet and decide your case later on, and we will send you a written opinion of our decision within 100 days. Today's hearing in the appeal of J. Hochberg and J. Hochberg is now adjourned. This concludes all of our oral hearing matters for the morning session. The afternoon session will reconvene later in the day. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.